Now I'd like to welcome you to this public launch of Put Public First Mayoral Tilt. And obviously when we're elected Mayor and Deputy Mayor, you'll all be welcome to the party at Town Hall. Now we've only got 8 other teams we're competing against. And a few weeks ago we weren't going to stand, but I kept getting calls about the nature of the people who are nominating for Mayor of Melbourne. And it seemed like a 50 Shades of Blue affair. And I thought, you know, we need something, a little bit of red and black in the campaign. And a little bit of shade of green. So there are 9 teams. There are 7 pro-business teams, 1 green team, and us. We are conducting a serious campaign for the Lord Mayoral election on the platform of putting public first. You'll be hearing candidates like the ones we've driven across the road talk about Melbourne running Melbourne as a business. Melbourne is a community. It's a community of over 200,000 people, 102,000 on the electoral roll. It includes the CBD, but it includes Carlton, North Carlton, Flemington, Kensington, South Melbourne, East Melbourne, what else? East Docklands, parts of South Yarra, West Melbourne, we're my partner. Now Dr. Ely and myself are running on a public first because listening to the other candidates you would think that this is an election about running a business. It's not. It's an election about people. And over the next 3 weeks we will be putting that forward in every forum possible. That this is an election about people. It's about cities. It's an election how people collectively and individually resolve the problems of having so many people in one small area. 4 million people in a city of 4 million. So we're standing to promote, protect and extend public housing and public schools in the city of Melbourne. Listening to this election you forget that most of the public housing estates are in the city of Melbourne. North Carlton, Carlton, Flemington, West Melbourne, Kensington. Thousands of people living in public housing. Great, no, they're not in it. They're not the city of Melbourne. No. City Yarra. Not Brand. So, we think that it is fundamental that we look after people through public housing and public schools. And what we've seen over the last 30 years is a revolution which has devalued and privatised public housing and public schools and public health. The second thing is, we're not interested in running the city of Melbourne as it runs, as a corporate-focused city. We want to see the development of an alternative economic system based on cooperatives and collectives, which provides secure, sustainable employment and provides goods and services for the people of Melbourne. We're not interested in people having part-time, poorly paid work. We want people to be self-sufficient, work for themselves and share the wealth which they create. We would like to see 10% of this city's revenue be diverted to provide seeding funding to set up collectives and cooperatives, to set up an alternative economic system based on the satisfaction of real, not manufactured human needs. Because you don't need billions of dollars to survive, you don't need billions of dollars to live a good life, and you don't need billions of dollars to prosper. What you need is secure, safe, sustainable employment. And you can do that through collectives. But you go to a bank and say you want to set up a carpenters collective or a food collective or a plumbers collective. It's all right, it's okay, you can come through, you know, and you'll find that nothing happens. So 10% of this city's revenue, total wealth, redirected to setting up an alternative economic system. Thirdly, some of the richest people and corporations live in the city of Melbourne. Everybody else is talking about reducing rates. Well, we want to double rates for all properties worth more than $10 million. And we want to quarantine the money raised to tackle the perennial problem of homelessness in Melbourne, which is swept under the carpet on a year-by-year basis. And we want to use that money to assist the 40% of people who live in the city of Melbourne who rely on social security benefits to survive. So we want to double rates on properties worth more than $10 million. Thirdly, we understand that this city has an Indigenous past. And since the last election, Dr. Ely and myself have been fighting with many hundreds of other people for the establishment of a significant monument to Tanaminoa and Morbohina, two Indigenous freedom fighters who were executed at the corner of Bowen and Franklin Street on the 20th of January 1842. Not just as some historical monument, but as a gathering place for Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians to learn about the city's unwritten history, to become involved in the struggle to finish the unfinished business that exists between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. We see this as a tangible way of actually promoting that struggle, that kick-starting the stalled reconciliation struggle. Tangible way. We'd like to see the whole area grassed and a monument there. People can go there, learn about the history, talk about it. And lastly, you see City Square over there. We want to see City Square renamed Human Rights Square to acknowledge the forceful eviction of Occupy Melbourne by police after giving the nod by the Premier Baillieu and the Lord Mayor Dolan from that place for peacefully raising the idea that wealth should be redistributed and power should be redistributed. Forcefully evicted. There are survivors here of that eviction who are involved in that. We want to see that not only renamed Human Rights Square, we want to see it as a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week focus on political and social activity, not commercial activity. Now obviously we have many other ideas, but these are the 5 major platforms. Now why are we standing? Very simply. Put public first. This statement will be sent to every elector on the Melbourne electoral roll, courtesy of the Australian Electoral Commission. So if people read the stuff the other candidates put up, like we want more parking, we want fewer roads or more roads, they may find there are some candidates with some radical ideas. And why do we think we need radical ideas to be canvassed? Because we face a difficult time, especially the younger people. Because as we move from a period of relative abundance to scarcity, as population increases, as greenhouse emissions due to human activity increases, as finite resources are used to manufacture goods we don't need to increase company profits, and as the economy is dominated by an economic system based on the creation of ever-increasing profits with respect to human, social and environmental costs, we find that we need radical solutions. So I'd like to thank you for coming. It's very interesting, but apart from the local media and the community media, there is no media. We sent over 1,000 email media releases and even some written ones. And so it's interesting. You'll find that the best way to help this campaign, there's only one way. You are not going to get the government-gelded ABC or the corporate-owned media talking about a public campaign of putting public first. It is unattractive in a corporate-dominated world. For us to get any traction, we need people here to go to our website, anarchistmedia.org, download the material, send it to your friends, set up blogging things, and get as many people as possible in the social sphere to take up the campaign. Because I can assure you, what you see written here is miles. This is a black caviar statement This is a statement that can't be beaten. It's a black caviar political statement. It is miles ahead of what you will see. And over the next 3 weeks, I'll be debating my colleagues who couldn't even stand in the corner. Let's go across the road because we were hogging their camera space. But we'll be debating our colleagues about these issues. But again, we have two options. We come last out of 9 candidates, which is quite possible without your assistance in the social media, or we come 4th or 5th or 3rd to show people that there is support for ideas, not personality. So thank you very much for coming. Dr. Ely will answer all the questions.
I have one major thing to say, and that is that there's a lot of homeless in this electorate. There were a lot of homeless in 2008, and there's more now. Mayor Doyle was very quick to take photo opportunities with the homeless down in Finger Street, but there's still more. He's done nothing. So although the homeless don't always have a vote in this election, Joe and I are determined to give them a voice.
And that's why part of our campaign is to double rates on properties worth more than 10 million and actually divert those rates, quarantine them for that very reason, to tackle that very real problem.
10% discount. 10% discount.
Yes.
And there's another very practical thing I'd like to see happen, and that is people putting more and more pressure on the state government and the federal government to give us public schools which are open to all children in the Melbourne area. They took them away from us. West Melbourne was taken by Kennett and given to the Salvation Army back in 1993. We want it back. There are children in the inner city and they are not going to have a free, secular and universal education in the coming years. So we're on about public housing and public education. We, in fact, are the group of the future. We'll leave the others to wander off into the past. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm honoured to stand with Jean. Jean, now you've got a very unusual combination of people here. We've come together for the sake of this city. You have an activist, militant Christian on my left and an atheist anarchist coming together for this campaign. Now, if we can come together, I'm sure people will be willing to vote for us because they know that together we have the knowledge and experience and the fortitude and the guts to introduce these policies.
Very good.
And that's what you've got here. You've got opposites attracting for the good of the city and the powerless and the dispossessed in the city.
And also we've been thinking every day, 8:30 every morning, they get a phone call. Television stations, the papers are off.
They've never answered. I'm still waiting.
Exactly. Now, look, I've been serious. We will get no traction in the corporate-owned media. I don't call them the mainstream media. We're the mainstream media. The corporate-owned media and the government guild at ABC, you will not get traction there. We have to run this campaign through social media. So those of you who are tech-savvy, who've got the time, use the networks you've got, download the material, send it to people, encourage them to debate it, and that's the only way we're going to break through.
In any case, the fourth media, the fourth estate, are on the ropes financially. The future lies with the fifth estate, which is the social media. We've got some of them here. Thank you for coming.
Here. So I'd like to thank Sheila and this ragtag mob here. Any questions?
When are you going to be at the Wheeler Centre? And who are you debating?
Look, there's a number of things set up. On Monday evening, I'll be at the Shark Fin, but it's a $65 affair, and I'll be debating whoever turns up. On the 16th, I'll be at the Wheeler Centre from I think it's 6:15 to 7:30. 6 candidates have said they'll debate. And there's a Kensington meeting, I think, on the 15th, and there's a few other meetings coming up. But you'll find that the Mayor will not go to any of these opportunities. He doesn't want to be debated. He doesn't want to be reminded of what happened to Occupy Melbourne. And he most likely will win. Because you've got to remember, in the City of Melbourne, it's a very funny election. Businesses have 2 or 3 votes, some businesses, and it's slanted 60-40 in terms of business votes in relation to the residents' votes. It is the only place in Australia, it's all right, off you go, it's the only place in Australia where people have multiple voting legally. So it's a fascinating electorate. And the reason it was created in this way is to ensure that somebody from the business community was Lord Mayor. And this is the only mayoral election where the Mayor is directly elected by the people. In every other council election in the state and the city, the Mayor is appointed by the other councillors, and it was specifically designed in such a way as to give the Mayor of Melbourne a little bit more power than other mayors to promote business interests. So it would be fascinating to see people like us knock on the door, not actually get in, but actually knock on the door, because that you'd see that is a change in the electoral system. Now people say to me, what about the East-West Tunnel? Well, our policy is to hold a referendum of the people who are affected. If they want an East-West Tunnel, well and good. If they don't want one, bad luck. Because they're the ones who are going to carry the cost, not the rest of Melbourne. That's it.
And it would be so easy, wouldn't it, to have
keep going, mate. It's all right. Keep going.
Social media.
That's it.
Why don't we have referendums on these things? On the current situation with the council, back in the 1970s and 80s, students and others fought to get on top of what they could do in the city. And we had better representation during the 80s. But this is now gone, and the civic group, the top end of town group, are now in power again. And the battle's got to be fought all over again. So we might be no longer in our first youth, but we are experienced in these battles.
You have 100 years of political experience. Machiavelli would be proud of us. He's an amateur compared to what we've been through. We can smell it a mile off, a deal a mile off. If there are no other questions, we'll the end of the media release or media conference. Thank you. And remember, it won't be Lord Mayor, it'll be Citizen Mayor and Citizen Deputy Mayor once we're elected.